Hey church, this month's book recommendation is a hymnal. Now, I didn't grow up necessarily singing the hymns all that much. The churches in which I grew up were typically not those that sang hymns, or we did so very rarely. Occasionally, maybe in my upbringing, I came across and was exposed to hymns, maybe in certain settings, certain church settings that I was involved in. But by and large, I did not grow up singing the hymns. And yet, as I've gotten older, as I came into adulthood, I have grown in my appreciation for the hymns. And so, as I said, this month's book recommendation is a hymnal. Any good hymnal, for that matter. This one is the Trinity Hymnal, which is a pretty well-known and used hymnal in Reformed circles. So I recommend this one if you don't have one already, or if you're not sure which one to pick up. And I would encourage you to use a hymnal in your personal devotions. You don't need to know guitar or have someone who can play piano. You can just sing these a cappella. You can sing the ones that you know, or there's also, if you want to gain familiarity with some of them, maybe you don't know a lot of them, there are a bunch of websites online that will help you learn the hymns, give you free accompaniment, as well as you can just Google a lot of these and kind of find a rendition that way. And hymns are also a great tool to use in family devotions. So as my wife and I think about raising our kids, we want our children to grow up knowing a lot of these well-known hymns. We want them to grow up knowing these hymns, these songs from our Christian tradition. And so what we do in our family devotions, among other things, like we go through a catechism, we do regular prayers, we read through the Bible or a children's Bible. We typically start our family devotion time by singing one of the hymns. We let the kids pick out one of the ones from the back and we'll sing it together. Now, maybe you're like me and you didn't grow up singing the hymns, or maybe you've even had a bad experience with hymns. Certainly there can be forms of singing the hymns that are very dry and not terribly attractive. So let me give you 4 reasons, and I'm sure there are plenty more, but let me give you at least 4 reasons why I think it's worthwhile to own a hymnal and to sing hymns. Reason number 1 is that many hymns are lyrically rich with theology. Not all hymns, obviously. There are some hymns that are not so great, but man, there are a lot of hymns that are. And these songs are worth knowing. They are full of rich lyrics that teach us theology through song. Secondly, many hymns were written particularly for congregational singing, and in a way that the melodies will get lodged into your memory. So hymns, a lot of hymns are designed to have a sense of staying power. And so they're great hymns to learn personally. They're the sort of songs that will stick with you. They're not really faddish, but they'll stick with you through the years, as well as great songs then for our children to learn, as these songs are songs that will stay with them. They're not just going to quickly leave memory. With that then, thirdly, is the Catholicity of these songs. Now, when I say Catholic, I mean that lowercase c. I'm not talking Roman Catholic, but Catholic in the sense of the universal church. Hymns are Catholic songs in the sense that these tend to be, there's a more likelihood that these are songs that other believers are singing in different parts of the world, as well as different eras of church history. Maybe you've had that experience where you're visiting another church. Maybe you're on vacation, you're visiting another church out of town, and you come into the service and they're singing a contemporary song that you've never heard of. Well, why is that? A lot of contemporary songs haven't necessarily had the time to gain traction, and they may never gain traction if they don't stick around very long. Whereas hymns are songs that there's a higher chance that these are the sort of songs that are being sung across a multitude of churches, not only geographically in our own era, but they're also being sung in past generation. And this means that if our children, for example, learned these songs, there's a greater likelihood that as they grow up, they're learning songs that other believers know. There's a collective sort of repertoire of songs among Christians, versus, say, if we learn contemporary songs, which are good, but maybe other Christians are less likely to know them, we lack that commonality then in knowing the same songs that we can sing together. Hymns are unlike that. Hymns tend to be more commonly held together among Christians across churches. And then finally, fourthly, is just the historicity of these songs. Some of these songs go back to the earliest centuries, some of them not so old, but maybe a few generations back or a generation back or so. But regardless of how old they are, typically hymns are not brand new. And of course, it's great to have new songs. No knock on contemporary songs. There are plenty of really good contemporary songs and songwriters out there. But one of the benefits of having an older song is what we're doing is we're connecting ourselves to the past. You see, the Christian faith isn't something that simply we believe in this generation. It's not the new kid on the block. But the church has existed for 2,000 plus years, and our faith is shared by a multitude of people who came before us. And one of the beautiful things about singing hymns is that we're singing songs that folks who came before us also sang. The same words that rolled off their lips are now rolling off of ours. And that's a pretty awesome thing that we can participate in ourselves as well as pass on to our children. To know that the faith that we hold is an ancient one. And I think that's increasingly valuable, especially as we live in a culture that kind of views Christianity as bizarre, or maybe even views us with hostility. To be able to teach our children and know ourselves that we're not alone in this, that the same things we are confessing today have been confessed by believers for centuries. All right, so those are just a samplings of reasons why I think it's valuable to own a hymnal and use a hymnal. In addition, as if you're a part of Crossway, you know that our children have a hymn of the month. So every month the children have a different hymn that they go through in their classes. And parents, that's a great tool for you to use, that during that month to look up on our website, what is the hymn that month? And maybe you can teach that hymn to your children at home throughout the week. I'm going to go ahead and share in the description to this video our hymns that we have our children go through. We have 3 years worth of hymns. So that's only, 12 hymns a year. That's only 36 hymns. That's not actually a whole lot. We had to cut out a lot of good ones, but I'll at least include those 36 because that may give you a good place to start in terms of learning some of the hymns for yourself.